Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching on YouTube, we aren't in our usual location on stage at C3 Thirul. I am at Steve and Vicky Danny's house in Tamor, in what is called the Mud House. Some of you may remember we recorded some episodes earlier in the year out here with Steve. We didn't have camera, but we do now today. And so we're in this really cool, funky mud house brick building that's being used as a recording studio. Behind us is Steve's music instruments everywhere. Hey, welcome, Steve. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me too.
It's great to have you back. We might move our microphones a little bit closer so we can make sure we get clear sound. There we go. It's good to have you. I had lots of fun with you last time we chatted. And I remember distinctly a couple of people contacting me and saying, I loved Steve being on the podcast. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. I think I told you. Yes.
No, you didn't.
I
and
didn't.
Here I'm sweating on it, wondering how many fans I've had. But
well, the two people that spoke to me loved
two fans. That's better than nothing.
Fans, yeah, that's right. No, we had a good chat last time. I think we were doing Deuteronomy or something, weren't we? Something heavy.
Something
heavy. Well, today we're coming towards the end of the year and we're recording Luke. Today we're going to sit down and record Luke chapters 8 to 12, and they'll be released during the course of the week, a week or two before Christmas. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to try and tackle everything in these chapters, are we? There's a lot.
Well, it's summer, it's hot, so you don't go for a marathon run on a day like today, do you?
Good call.
So
we had the air conditioning cranking in here, but we picked it up pretty quickly in the headphones, so it's turned right down low now. Right. So either we're going to get hot and sweaty, or you're going to hear background noise.
Right.
Hopefully, you won't hear too much background noise. If you hear just know it's the air conditioner, or it could be Steve
making sounds. But you're talking about the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Now we're doing something on the New Testament.
We are.
And it's no less thoughtful. It's, it's head on, and there's a lot of thinking and processing through. So I'm really looking forward to this. What is it?
Luke chapter 8?
8 to 12.
Yeah. And there's some long chapters here. We say this on the podcast very often. The Gospels are about twice as long. The chapters are about twice as long. And Jeannie, if you're listening, we're not going to do everything today. Sorry, you'll have to wait. But we will be revisiting all these chapters next year in our churches in some form or other, because we're going to be focusing on the whole year on stuff that Jesus said. Red letter stuff in your Bible. So we're going to dig into Jesus next year. So rather than try and tell every story, Steve's just pulled out some notes and he's just read through these chapters, and we're just going to maybe tackle different things that intrigued you that you thought we'd like to discuss. Is that the way you want to go?
Yeah, I'd like to start off with the role of women.
The role of women. Right in Luke chapter 8, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? It's interesting. I got up this morning and I had a look on the Facebook, I think, ABC News. And it says there that the first time that the men going that have overtaken women as far as the statistics as going back to Pentecostal churches, Christianity.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Because there's the Gen Z.
The Gen Z men are going back to Pentecostal churches.
Yeah, and now they've gone, there's more of them than women.
Intriguing. Did they give reasons?
Well, I think previous to that, with the women particularly, they thought that, but they called it organised religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, organised religion.
And they felt that was traditionally male orientated, hierarchically, and all that.
Certainly historically, it has been.
Historically, and all that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I don't know. What do you think it could be? I reckon, is it because we're running into some hard economical times? And
that's a good thought. I'm intrigued by that. But could be. When you sit and talk, you do your philosophy conversations with a lot of friends and talk through the reasons for life and all that sort of stuff. But that does make sense that in a time when there is a higher degree of uncertainty around how to make ends meet, what does the future look like, etc., it is kind of pushing, and I can understand why it would be pushing more so males back to church, because I'd say historically in Pentecostal and evangelical churches in the last 100 years, there's definitely been more women than men in those churches.
Yeah,
So that's an interesting stat. I'm really intrigued by that.
We need to have a good mix, a good balance,
Absolutely
don't we?
Absolutely we
do. Because we have a lot of women in our church.
Yeah, that's right. It's not it's
playing
not
many different roles.
Yep, that's right. And that's tended to be what happens in most churches. And partly that's been sociological. That's been
Mm.
more women are at home, as
Mm.
I'm generalizing here, but just sociologically, more women have tended to be at home or work part-time, so have a bit more flexibility. More men have tended to work full-time. And I'm certainly not, I have no problems with people who choose to do that or people who choose to, reverse the roles. I have no problem with that at all. But I'd say historically that's probably meant that more women have had the availability to do work in the church or volunteer in the church and that kind of stuff. So that would lead into it. They've had the means, perhaps.
That's right.
Well, the availability, I should say.
But going back to those times in Luke, we have Mary Magdalene, Joanna. Interestingly, Herod's steward.
Yes. So
what was going on?
She's an
was
interesting
she a spy or something? Or
that's a really good one.
Something?
She's a really interesting one. I mean, they do a really good job with Joanna on The Chosen as well. If you watch The Chosen, yeah.
Okay.
So she is the wife of the chief steward of Herod's house. So he would be like the maitre d', I suppose. He obviously oversees all of Herod's household, which would have been a major undertaking. There would have been slaves and kitchens and managing the books. It was like looking after a castle, basically, I suppose. And it's his wife who has somehow, she's Jewish, but somehow she has gotten in and heard of Jesus and has somehow or other been so intrigued by Jesus that she's bankrolling him with her husband's money or with the family's money. She seems to be supporting his ministry. It's intriguing, isn't it?
Well, it's interesting, though, that the Herod, somewhere here in the sections we're looking at,
yes,
he hears of Jesus.
Yes.
And who is he, Is he Elijah and all this? And he's pretty curious and he wants to meet him.
Yes.
So what's his in his head there?
That is it. Well, you don't see it until in Luke's gospel. The time when Herod finally meets Jesus is right before the crucifixion, when Jesus is arrested, and he's sent to Pilate, and then Pilate finds out he's from Galilee and says, "Oh, Herod, that's Herod's jurisdiction. I'll palm him off to Herod." And it says in Luke's gospel, it's probably about Luke 21 or something. I have already recorded that with Adrian Gallagher actually, but it says something to the effect of Herod for a long time wanted to see Jesus, so he plied him with all kinds of questions and basically wanted him to do some magic tricks. So Jesus wouldn't come to the party on all of that.
I was just wondering because I was wondering what the kind of conversations they'd have.
Yeah,
Well,
it sounds to me like he would be fascinated with Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway, I was going to jump too many steps forward about that, but if I can
remember, we'll come back to it
I'll
when we
back
get to that context.
But it says here, and many others who provided for him from their substance, which means possessions.
Yes.
So, food.
So this is women of means in this culture. That's not something a lot of people would think, but it's very clear that women had the ability to generate their own wealth. This wasn't just their husband's money necessarily. They had means. Mary of Magdalene. I mean, we've been to Magdala when we were in Israel. We went there, and in fact, we're going to go out in the Sea of Galilee in these conversations, and we've been out on the Sea of Galilee and Magdala, if you remember, was a very wealthy town. They exported fish all over the empire from Magdala. So Mary being from there, it makes sense that she was probably a woman of some wealth, a businesswoman.
Right.
So these ladies not only had a heart to follow Jesus, they had the means and the desire to support his ministry.
They can organise themselves. Women tend to be better at organising. I think, the apostles would be running around and, like me, I say to my wife, where is the butter in the fridge or where's this? And 3 times I looked and...
That's probably right. And she goes, right there, honey.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Yeah, and I reckon that would be interesting, wouldn't it? The disciples probably would have been, the male disciples would have been quite happy to leave it to the women to take care of this stuff so they could just not have to think about that level of organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's certainly a place for women. In Jesus' ministry. And this is one of the many cases where he elevates women and to give them the opportunity to be responsible for funding his work. They would have been, paying for the food, probably paying for accommodation at times, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty significant.
Where would we be today if we don't have women in the church?
We wouldn't be able to function.
No, wouldn't, absolutely.
No. The women in all churches make a massive difference in terms of the level of volunteer labour to get not just the Sunday stuff done, but to get the ministry of the church done through, every day. Mm.
Oh, we say we appreciate them. We
Yes.
love them.
Absolutely. Thank you, women.
I think the next one's the parables.
Yep.
You know, okay, we can go on about particular parables. I mean, the Sower is a great one, but it's more so, you know, he talks about so that hearing and seeing, you know, it seems like it's only a select few. You know what I mean? That
is it confusing people deliberately, or is it actually? Yeah. That's the big question people say. Is Jesus trying to hide things, or is he trying to reveal things? Is that what you've got?
Yeah, that messes a little bit my head, because why would he want to hold back? You know, is it what they're just so stubborn that that's okay. Going back to Herod.
Yep.
Do you think Jesus would have a kind of conversation if they did get together? If he kind of reads Herod and thinks he's a bit stubborn, he has his own. You know, he's not open to you know, the spiritual truth.
Good call. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
well, I think my heart for what I see of Jesus is that he was prepared to engage with anybody who showed any desire or openness or inquisitiveness. Where he would come down strong is when he sensed that there was none of that. If he sensed that there was no openness of heart, then that was where he would tend to either one, be quite very strong in his kind of words of damnation against that, you know, calling people to the judgment of the way they're going, or he would just tend to ignore that and go find those who were hungry. That's the other thing Jesus would do a lot of. He would go and find the people who were generally hungry for the truth, and he would go and minister to them. So Herod's interesting. We do know a lot from one of the other Gospels about when he arrested John the Baptist. So even though he hadn't had anything to do with Jesus, he had a lot to do with John the Baptist. And he obviously got ticked off with John because John was telling him off for marrying his brother's wife and saying that's against Jewish law. You can't call yourself the king of the Jews and disobey Jewish law. And he got imprisoned. But we know the story that eventually Herod had his John decapitated. But that was probably more to do with his wife and her upset, because it often said Herod often called for John and was intrigued by him.
Right.
So there's something in this Herod Antipas. This isn't Herod the Great. This is his son, Herod Antipas. There must have been something in him that had some degree of intrigue.
Absolutely. You know, Jesus created waves in a different way. I think what is the Jewish messianic understandings of expecting someone on a horse with a sword.
Yeah, like the military leader.
Yeah, military leader. But Jesus was doing it largely a different way. Do you think that could have been part of Herod's intrigue?
It could have been, yeah, because there were others claiming to be messiahs who were leading military campaigns, and zealots and all those guys were around. I wonder if that was part of it. I'd have to do more research. I don't think there's enough evidence within the writings of Scripture to tell us what was really going on inside Herod Antipas. The best guess you could make is that there was some level of fascination with Jesus, some level of fascination with the miracles that he did, but somehow also mixed into maybe this peer pressure to have to put on a performance and be the king, and he would have been living in opulent wealth, you know. So he was blinded by his greed and his opulent lifestyle and the level of depravity and sexuality and everything else that was going on. He had all of that in front of him.
So tiring, isn't it? He's probably looking at something else. You never know.
I wonder if that was the case.
A little sideway look and say, "No, there's this guy called Jesus. He's talking." You know,
I wonder if all the stuff that you're saying, all the stuff he was living, all the opulence was not meeting the need in his heart, and somewhere he was intrigued by that.
That ego-driven lifestyle is very tiring.
Yeah, good call. Spoken like a philosopher. I had never thought of that. Well, that's really intriguing. And so
I wonder
what Jesus would have said. It's really to Herod.
Oh. Yeah. But anyway, this parable, maybe we can do one either Sower.
Sure.
I reckon I went through 3 of those, you know, the stony ground, the thorns, and the fine soil.
Yeah.
You know, you hear it and oh, geez, that's, wow, that's profound, isn't it? I'm sort of thinking back in those days, imagine, say you and I are there and listening and think, wow, that was a pretty interesting parable. You know, it's sort of trying to work it out.
Confused by it, yeah.
Yeah, but you can be. But then say you fully understand it, and you think I'm all for this guy Jesus. I want to know more. I want to live this lifestyle. And then come a week later, Rohan, I don't know about this man. I don't know. I'm just going back to fishing, and you know,
so
I'll leave it at that.
There's a fickleness there. You're inspired one day, fickle the next.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't that human life?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Problems of life, challenges make us lose our focus sometimes.
We want it too easy, don't we?
Yeah.
Hey, if Jesus is talking to me about this parable of the sower,
I'll be the good soil. It'll be easy.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, and I'm gonna live this life, and then there's the real struggles and challenges. Yeah. But then you got the thorns, haven't you? The Satan. You know, I mean, I copped a fair share of that as well.
Yep. And interestingly, in the parable, when Jesus, doesn't explain every parable. Some of them he just leaves hanging out there. But this is one of the ones where he famously does explain it. And he says the thorns are the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of wealth. So there's something about the worries of life.
Right.
Making ends meet.
Right.
Paying the bills. Food on your table. The constant lure of more stuff. All of that is thorns that can get in the way. Like he says, the seed can get in these ones. The seed gets going. It gets into the ground. It germinates. It starts to take root. But then the thorns, the worries, the cares choke it.
Well, it's Satan's very subtle, very cunning, and it's like, what is it? The wheat and the tares. It's the same sort of thing. You got to know which one's the weed and which one.
Exactly.
And
don't always know at the beginning which is the wheat and the tares. It takes time. That parable says, yeah,
and it takes a lifetime of experience and understanding and gaining wisdom and fellowship with the right people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can. I mean, if you're not on the ball, Satan can just push over very. Very easy.
And you're right. There's fellowship with the right people, doing this kind of thing, talking through the Word of God with people, listening to the podcast, wrestling with it, but then taking it into conversations with your friends and your connect groups and all that kind of stuff, so that we spur one another on and keep ourselves focused, because we'll all have times where the thorns will be there. And we need our brothers and sisters around us to root those thorns out for us to allow us to flourish. And then there'll come a time when they need us to do the same thing. And that's the power of community. We're working together to support one another.
That's the sanctification process, isn't it?
True.
I think in the early, when, what do they say? You're just getting spiritual food, milk, before you have the solids. Yeah. I think it's important that if somebody wants to become a Christian and test the waters, then it's very important that they hang in there particularly in their early stages of their growth. I think
Good call.
And that's why you, pastor in the church, are there to support.
We want to give people space to explore and ask questions.
That's right.
And do that, in a safe environment where no question is off limits. And look, you've done that fantastically. You're one of the prime examples of someone who's able to just engage seekers, people who maybe even come from different worldviews, different religions, in conversation, in an environment where people can ask questions and feel safe to ask questions without feeling like they're being hammered with your perspective. And you do that really well. Yeah,
that's a lot of time and patience. You have a long relationship with these kind of people, but that's okay. Then, of course, you've got the fine soil. You're on top of your game. You feel anyway. You're understanding what it's like to be Christ-like, and you feel you've had victories and things like that. But one should not be what's the word? You've got to be on your ball game all the time, don't you?
Don't become complacent. Is it
complacent? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's interesting, you find new discoveries all the time. I mean, never think that you know it all.
Totally.
Once you think that.
Yeah. Well, we know it agriculturally, don't we? Good soil does not remain good soil.
I know where
you know where I'm thinking
nutrients,
about. You use it to create fruit, which creates good fruit. But if you don't replace the nutrients, it will then eventually it'll lose its fruitfulness. If you leave it too long, rocks and weeds and you name it, it all comes in there. So eventually, good soil becomes hard ground, And that's why we need to keep working at it. Yeah, I'm in good soil today, Lord, but what do I need to do to make sure that I renutrient my soil for tomorrow?
Well, that's prayer.
Yeah.
Daily prayer, meditation.
Yep.
I fertilise my heart and mind. I'm fuller.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I lost a joke there.
No, that's all right.
You're looking at me and I'm thinking, is there a joke coming?
No.
You're looking at me. Say it again.
No, it's fertilising. There's organic fertilisers.
Organic fertilisers.
Poo and all that.
Yes.
And I don't want to be talking full of that. You know what I mean?
Get you. Yeah, I get. Now I'm tracking.
Animal manures.
Now I'm tracking with you.
You know
Isn't it funny that it's that stuff that fertilizes?
It's that kind of stuff. Stuff that smells.
It's the one that brings the most fruitfulness.
Yeah.
Interesting agricultural thought there. I have to think that one through. But yes, we want to be good soil, and there's in this parable, there's a mixture of the divine aspect of God planting the soil and him making the seed grow and all that sort of stuff. But there's also a responsibility on us as the soil. Yeah. There's a responsibility on us as the farmers of our own soil, to do some cultivation, because even the best seed can't grow in a soil that is not allowing it to grow. And that bit is a partnership between God and us. God will say, Rohan, I need that weed out of your life. I need to get rid of that rock that's blocking that area of fruitfulness. You've got some hard ground there. Mm-hmm. He'll prompt me, but he partners with me. He might prompt me and say, you need to change that, but he won't force me to change that. So I surrender to him. Lord, show me where I need to plow up my soil. He'll put his finger on it, and then it's incumbent on me in fellowship with others to be able to do that work, to allow God's fruitfulness to grow in that area.
Yeah, I think we haven't fully talked about, why did Jesus hide the truth in the parable?
Yeah, that's right. This is a really good question. Scholars are divided about it.
Right.
The best guess that I have, which is, and I'm not going to say this is the only answer, because much more wise men and women than me have come up with all kinds of reasons.
Right.
The disciples do say to him sometimes, why do you speak in parables? And he says to them, is that his explanation in Luke, or is that somewhere else?
Yeah, it is in Luke.
He actually answers them as to why he speaks in parables. I'm just trying to find if it's in this chapter or not.
Yeah, and
like it is
the purpose of parables, but I think then you've got to go to Matt or Mark to sort of get these notes.
So he says something like this. He says, I say parables so that those who are searching will find truth, and those who aren't searching won't see the truth. And so a lot of scholars will argue that Jesus speaking in somewhat confusing parables is actually a sign of his grace, because if you're searching for truth, you can go into a parable, dig into its meaning, ask the questions, do the philosophical work, do the theological work, and discover a rich nugget of truth about God's kingdom. However, by disguising it and hiding it from those that aren't seeking, it's actually a sign of God's grace, because he isn't going to hold them accountable for something that they don't already know, that they haven't noticed.
Right.
So it's an invitation to those who are seeking, and it's a blinding of the eyes for those who aren't seeking.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because if they're hard-hearted and he tells them straight, then they're going to be held accountable for that. So it's actually a grace. And but at the same time, if at any point our hearts lean into, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to understand, suddenly the purpose of these parables comes to life with rich meaning. And nearly every parable is a parable about the kingdom of God or kingdom life.
Yeah.
In fact, all of our chapters this week are all about, what does it mean to live kingdom life? What does it look like to live out the life of God's kingdom? And so for those that are seeking those answers, they can find them. Parable of the sower, parable of the wheat and tares, parable of the lamp, all the ones that he's going to do. There's something in them that we can dig into, understand, and as a result of that, discover something of kingdom life.
Yeah, self-inquiry. He's wanting you to
dig
in. And I guess if you're anti, you see this on Facebook and comments and things like that, it's not till they come to a place where they come to a realization or whatever it is, or a turning around that maybe they are interested in understanding what Christianity is, and they'll open up. Once you got to open up, it's no point.
Yeah, true. You've got to open your heart.
Yeah, that's right.
For the Spirit to be able to begin to work. And we all have to do that. As Christians, we can think we know it all. We think we're good soil and we haven't opened our hearts. We get to the point where we close our hearts and we become religious like the Pharisees and think we have it all. And we lose the inquisitiveness that once maybe we had when we were young Christians.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. What else have I got here? Truth, kingdom truth, identity. You know, why did Jesus or God give people in the Bible a different name? You know, Saul becomes Paul, Abraham becomes Abraham, and all these kind of things. You know, who was Peter? Simon becomes Peter. Also things like, you know, when Jesus says to the apostles, "What do the crowds? Who do they say I am?" Oh, he's John the Baptist or whatever. And who do you say I am? And of course, Simon says, God the Christ. Is that right?
He says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
Yes. So what's this about? Why he gives different names to people?
Yeah, good call. Good question. I think we probably don't understand the significance of names. They don't mean as much in our culture as they meant in that culture.
Yeah.
So to understand the depth of meaning in ancient cultures, that a name was attached to the person's identity and their upbringing. So then the people around them saw them and it shaped their view of that person. Their name shaped their view of that person. So if Simon means a reed or that's tossed around like a reed of grass, it means this instability. It means this lack of, being unstable, being easily tossed here and there. And you kind of get that sense from Peter as you read the Gospels that he was kind of erratic. You know, he was 1 minute he was on fire, the next minute he's denying Jesus, all that kind of stuff. Right. So when Jesus says, "I say you're not Simon anymore, you're Peter, or a rock," he is doing something, prophetically speaking into him, to call him something that he's not. When God says to Abram, "You're no longer just, your name just doesn't mean exalting me, Father. It now means you're the father of many nations, father of many peoples." It's doing something that changes
their identity. And I'm giving you something. You are going to, I'm calling you upon to do something special. Correct. You know. But the kind of message. If Jesus said to you, "You're not Rohan, I'll call you Fred."
Yes.
That messes with your head and think, wow, what's
the purpose of that?
Blows your identity out. And you think, well, what are you saying? You know, because usually, when you introduce yourself, you go, "Well, my name is Rohan," or "My name is Steve." You don't say, "I am Christian," or something like that.
But then put that into 2,000-year-old culture and it's another level again. Because the name is so much more intrinsically linked to what people think of us. Right. So most people go Rohan. You be the odd person that goes, "Oh, Rohan, what does that mean?" But that we don't assign people, when people say, "Hi," when I say to them, "Hi, my name's Rohan," they don't suddenly load up a whole lot of stuff about me based on what I've introduced my name is. In that culture, it was much more so that. So they carried with them the demeanor and the identity.
It's different to rock stars having a rock star name, Slash or something like that. Yeah, because that's that persona.
Yeah, it's
or something like that.
It's probably actually, I haven't never thought about it, but it probably is a little bit like that. It's probably that it carries with it that level of respect. So we say Slash, or we say, the artist formerly called Prince.
Yeah, that's right. X.
Whatever we say, X. Yeah. We say that it carries with it something about that person that we wouldn't have otherwise assigned. And that's probably not that far off how it would have been for most people.
It's like God saying, "Rohan, you're Fred now, and I want you to be fully the person I want."
Yep. You'll be
persona. This.
And Fred will mean such and such. Fred will mean that you are a particular character.
Yeah.
You are particularly favoured by me in a certain way, that kind of thing.
That carries a special weight, doesn't it?
It does.
When God or Jesus calls you this new name, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
But it's, honour.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of responsibility.
Yeah.
Or you think, wow, okay, Fred.
Yeah.
No, who's Fred?
Who's Fred? But it would then require, in that culture, you would have gone away and gone, okay, well, what does that mean for me? Once again, they do this really well on The Chosen in season 4. Jesus changed Peter's name from Simon to Peter. And you see the disciples trying to figure out why and getting used to having to call him by a new name, and Peter having to wrestle with what does it mean that I'm suddenly called Peter?
Yeah.
And that's probably what it would have been like. Yeah, so it's kingdom life. It's Jesus putting something new in us, which is what the parables are about. Back to the parables, it's about wanting to deposit something in us of what it means to live a kingdom life and how to act out and play out a different way of life.
Jesus is constantly changing and shaping, let's say, the apostles, because he wants them to be ready.
Yep.
So this is the Galilean ministry, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Here. All of this stuff that we're reading in Luke 8.
That's right.
I think a couple of chapters on, as we get to those in later episodes this week, we'll see that he starts to move his mind towards Jerusalem.
Because he's getting himself ready. He knows what's happening to him. Yep. But it's very important that he has the apostles ready.
Yes, exactly.
Even though, look what happened to them.
Even though they're not really ready. They're still not ready, are they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it's, So do you think when he says it quite a bit, who do you say I am? And but isn't it almost like also saying, well, who are you? Yeah,
well, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. I think
it's like in modern terms, it's like saying, well, what's my true self? What's my authentic self? Yes. You ask questions about yourself. So is he engaging the apostles to think about who they're standing in relation?
I wonder, because I think when Jesus says to them, for instance, who do the crowd say I am? It's not because Jesus is insecure and worried about what the crowds think. Yeah. He's got it down pat. He knows what's in. He knows the crowds are fickle. He knows that. So what I think what you're saying is his question actually more about helping by them having to say, because the next question will go on and say, okay, well, that's what the crowds say, but who do you say I am? Yeah. That's really a question trying to dig into the disciples to ask them about what they think and who they, because it really is more shedding a light on their identity, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Because if we were one of the apostles and he asked that question, who do you say? Of course I'd be thinking to myself, long and hard about, okay, who's this Jesus that I've been with for
and if he is what I'm about to say he is, what does that mean for the implications on my life? And in a way, Jesus does ask all of us that. In a way, all these parables, all these stories, all these questions that Jesus asked are written. We should read them as though we were walking with the disciples, like you just said. What would we say in those environments? Because Jesus is asking us, who do you say I am? Yeah. And it's up to us to go, really, well, you are the Messiah. Therefore, if he's the Messiah, what does that mean for us? How do we live our lives? What implications should that be for the way we conduct ourselves? Yeah,
and get the philosophers saying, "Who am I?" And but I'd be saying, "Who am I?" Okay, I'm to be in Christ, being Christ-like. And
it might be St. John of the Cross or someone that dabbled in philosophy and theology, and he said, I think it might have been him, someone like him said, I must know God in order to fully know myself.
Yeah.
Because I can't fully find out who I am unless I find out about the God who made me to be the person I am.
Yeah, and then you hear you need to deny yourself or lose yourself.
Yep.
This is going back to with all this identity thing,
It is, isn't it? Wow, He probably's going to say that. I think it's in one of these chapters where he's going to say it. Maybe it's not in the one we're in now, Luke chapter 8. Maybe we'll get there in Luke chapter 9. But he does question them specifically about what it means to take up your cross and follow him.
Well, that's right, and of course now he's getting them on the road, isn't he? How he's in go in groups of two, and
yep.
This is the real test. Is this the first real test thing for
Just trying to see whether that's in this chapter or we will talk about it in the next one. That might be actually in chapter 9, is it?
I think sending out the 12, chapter 9.
Yeah, so we'll do that. We'll do that one tomorrow because that's a really good question. Let's finish chapter 8 and then we'll go on to chapter 9.
Awesome.
Because they do flow into each other really well.
Okay.
I think probably just one thought I'd bring out towards the end of this whole chapter is there's this story. So Jesus is really just teaching these parables and then he's living out the kingdom life. So he leaves one side of the Sea of Galilee and they jump on a boat and they go across to the other side. And we went out on the boat and had a great worship time out on the boat. And Jesus went right across the Sea of Galilee to get to the other side to heal that one demon-possessed man, to set him free. That's how valuable people are to Jesus. It's like Jesus has taught this stuff about the parables of the kingdom life. And he says, now I'm going to show you what it's like. Let's get in a boat. let's go and find this man who everyone thinks is crazy, who everyone has written off, and I'm going to set that man free to show how important and how valued every human being is. And then it gets straight back in the boat, and just before he launches out his 72, he goes back again and he heals the Jairus, the synagogue ruler's daughter, to show, and in the process of going to heal her, that woman who has the issue of blood. And we saw that in Magdala. We saw the beautiful, in the bottom of this church, this beautiful painting of the woman trying to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Jesus teaches and then shows by his actions kingdom life. He shows us that people matter. We're going to go on and see it in later chapters this week, Parable of the Good Samaritan. He explains what it means and then shows what it means to live a life that values everybody.
That's incredible. I mean, I guess apostles feel that, back in those days, they're living mere existence. They're under the impression of the Roman Empire. And, when it's mere existence, you got to, what's the next food and all this sort of stuff. But no, Jesus is teaching them, we've got to get on the boat. There's as if there's more important things to do.
That's right.
Let's go across.
Let's go others focused.
It's all right.
Totally.
God will provide all those other areas.
God will take care of that if you seek first the kingdom, if you take up your cross. And that's why these chapters, these middle chapters of Luke, I think are often skipped over because they're just lots of stories. But Luke has crafted these chapters, sort of 8 to 14 kind of area. He's crafted these there are a bunch of stories, but he's very cleverly put them together in such a way that shows us how Jesus teaches and then Jesus does. And those two things are the effectiveness of Jesus' ministry. He taught and then he did, so that we, his disciples then and all of us now, understand what it means to do kingdom life. Like you said, to be willing to give up my own food, to jump on a boat and cross over and feed another person, to care for the hurting and the broken, the lost, the helpless. That's what Jesus is showing us is really what kingdom life is about. That's how we bring kingdom of heaven to earth.
Hallelujah.
All right, well, let's press on to chapter 9 tomorrow. We'll talk to you then, and we'll get into, as you said, Jesus sending out the 12 and what that all means. We'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?